UFC Fight Night, Ankalaev versus Walkers. This weekend, I'm going to give you a full card prediction and breakdown of all fights on the card, starting with Felipe Bunes versus Joshua Van. I'm going to go with Joshua Van. I know he had a little bit of a rough start at the beginning of his Kevin Borjas fight, but he did show to be pretty decent against Zaglas Magilab. It was a split decision, but I thought he won that one for sure. But in the early parts of the Kevin Borjas fight, I believe he did get knocked down or something like that. Kevin Borjas is actually a pretty solid fighter. I took him on the Contender Series. That got me super hyped at the beginning of it, and then I proceeded to get some really rough picks in the Contender Series. But Joshua Van is really good at keeping a good distance and then kind of tapping on the inside. And he can also release some combos, especially when he's a lot more comfortable in the fight. Felipe Bunes, what I notice is he throws a lot to the outside and he leaves his chin open quite a bit with attacks from the inside. And so I'm just going to go with Joshua Van. I think he can get the finish here by KO. People are saying decision. I think a second round TKO is probably where I would go with Joshua Van. Joshua Van has really good technique, really good combinations. He's going to mess with Felipe Bunes' body. Maybe Bunes can eventually counter Van and hurt him pretty badly, but I think Van is very solid on the feet. Only 22 years of age as well, 34 years of age for Felipe Bunes at flyweight. I don't know how well it's going to work out for him, but I am going to go with Joshua Van by TKO in the second round. I think he's just going to be a little bit too much to the body, and I think he's just going to tag him straight down the middle against Bunes here. So I'm going to go second round TKO for Joshua Van. Up the card, we have Tom Nolan versus Nikolas Motta. I am going to go with Tom Nolan. He looked really good on the Contender Series. I actually am pretty excited for this card. I saw someone on Twitter or whatever, or X, whatever you call it. They said this card was actually like one of the worst ones they've seen. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, there's different phases of cards that you can see. Ones with rough main events and then rougher cards. Like, you'll definitely see that at least like once a year. However, there's a lot of nice prospects on this card. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to it just to see how they do, especially in the UFC. Tom Nolan is definitely one of those guys. Just new into the UFC off his KO win against Bogdan, which is absolutely vicious. My one worry about Tom Nolan in this fight is that he is a little bit... how do I say this? He's not very smart on the feet defensively, is how I'll say. He's very hittable on the feet, and Nikolas Motta does have a lot of power in his hands, so maybe Nikolas Motta can eventually KO Tom Nolan, or not. I won't necessarily say KO, but I think maybe catch Tom Nolan. I'm going to go with Tom Nolan in this fight. He's very crisp on the feet, has a lot of power in his hands, is able to wrestle a little bit, so I think that he's going to get after Motta on the ground, and then maybe ground and pound him, get Motta moving a little bit, so he can eventually put in his little bit more of a chaotic style on Motta and basically catch him kind of like how he did against Bogdan, because I believe Nikolas Motta did get KO'd by Jim Miller, and I think Jim Miller does have a lot of power in his hands. He's a lot older, of course, but I think Tom Nolan is a very good fighter with a lot of power in his hands as well. So I think he's going to be able to catch Nikolas Motta. I think it's going to be quite an exchange. I think Nikolas Motta is just going to barely miss with the hook. It's going to be very similar, in my opinion, to the Bogdan fight. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Bogdan went for a couple like hook punches and then just got caught with like a left hook and then just got put out with a couple hammer fists. I think it's going to be like that, possibly in the second round. Maybe Tom Nolan gets to finish in the first round, but Tom Nolan, a very good fighter, definitely a guy to watch out for. 23 years of age. 23 years of age and 10 months. I don't know why I was going to say that, but his size, 6'3", 76 inches of reach at lightweight, is kind of insane. He's going to be towering above Nikolas Motta in this fight. So I'm going to go with Tom Nolan by KO in the second round. Jim Miller was able to do it. Maybe a first round finish as well, but I'm going to go with Tom Nolan by finish. Up the card, we have Westin Wilson versus Gene Silva. I'm going to go with Gene Silva. The one thing with Westin Wilson that I definitely said in his prediction of his last fight against Joe Anderson Brito, who's a lot better than him, is Westin Wilson thinks he's Wonder Boy. However, he has zero defensive awareness, and his chin is not that good either. So imagine like a Wonder Boy skill level and then putting it down here a little bit more. And that's Westin Wilson. So I think Gene Silva is going to mess him up a little bit on the feet. Got a decision win over Kevin Bolanos on the Contender Series. I think he's going to be able to tag up Westin Wilson quite a bit. Westin Wilson does have a decent amount of skill. However, he's 35 years of age, way too open on the feet, and I think he's going to get tagged very badly. 73 inches of reach, well before inch reach advantage over Gene Silva, but I don't think that'll be enough for him in this fight. Gene Silva by KO, 93%. Picked by Tapology, 71% by KO. I'm going to go with Gene Silva by finish. I think that's a pretty straightforward prediction there. And minus 800 favorite, that's probably about right. I mean, I don't like big favorites like that, but I don't think Westin Wilson's that good. Up the card, we have Farid Basharat versus Taylor Lapilus. This one's a very interesting fight because we have two very young prospects coming at each other. Farid Basharat, of course, his brother's in the UFC as well. Javid Basharat, similar to like the Bonfim brothers, came in on the Contender Series. Bonfim brothers kind of got shot up a little bit quicker against tougher opponents. Farid Basharat and Javid Basharat have kind of shown to be a little bit more skilled. It is a little bit more of a lower weight class, so it is going to be showing a little bit more skill than I would say lightweight or welterweight because it's just a different division. However, of course, both brothers are pretty good. Farid Basharat is a lot faster than his brother Javid. I think Javid's a little bit more calmer, a little bit more patient on the feet. Farid Basharat's just going to get after it. He's a lot faster on the feet. They're both very skilled everywhere. Taylor Lapilus in his last fight pretty much fought the mini Vittori. He's just going to look for a takedown. Basically, I guess the early part of the fight, mini Vittori was kind of just like trying to get him close so he can shoot for a takedown, but he was just getting tagged by Lapilus. Lapilus was basically running around in a circle, playing defense, tagging up mini Vittori as he tried to come in. So that's basically all that fight was. However, Farid Basharat is a lot more skilled all around than mini Vittori, Colin Loughlin, or however the hell you say his name. He's a lot more skilled. He's going to be able to play the game on the feet and on the ground. I think he's going to be able to shoot takedowns on Lapilus, make it very hard for him to breathe in this fight. I think he's going to go after him. He's going to be a little bit too fast on the feet. Lapilus is very good on the feet as well. However, I think Farid Basharat with the takedown game, I think is going to be a little bit more threatening than what I think Taylor Lapilus can give him. So I know Taylor Lapilus does have decent takedown defense. He did a decent job against Colin Loughlin, even though Colin Loughlin, outside of tying the legs up on the ground, couldn't really do too much. I think Farid Basharat is just going to be a little bit too much there on the ground and on the feet. I think he can hang in there with Taylor Lapilus. So I'm going to go Farid Basharat by decision. I'll go 30-27. Maybe Lapilus can get around in there. Maybe it's the 29-28 decision, a little bit closer. However, I'm just going to stick with Basharat by decision. I think he's just a little bit more skilled all around than Taylor Lapilus. Up the card, we have Marcus McGhee versus Gaston Bolanos. I am going to go with Marcus McGhee. He's very strong. Just fought, who was it? JP Bays in his last fight. JP Bays is a very good wrestler himself, trains with a lot of those guys in New York, like your Aljamain Sterling and Marab. So he's training with a lot of good fighters, especially good wrestlers. And Marcus McGhee was able to stuff a lot of those takedowns, was able to just outmuscle him in the fight. He is a little bit older, 33 years of age, especially at bantamweight. That is a little bit worrying, but Gaston Bolanos is, 31 years of age. I like Gaston Bolanos coming into his last fight against Aaron Phillips. He basically eked out a decision. I think it was like 29-28 or whatever. But he does have a very vicious KO in his record. I think it was like a spinning elbow. They have it put down as like a spinning back fist, but it was over in Bellator. It was an absolute brutal spinning back elbow, and he basically just tries to go for it quite a bit. He did it quite a bit against Aaron Phillips in his last fight, and basically got taken down because of it. So the fight IQ is a little bit questionable, but he does have a very big opening on the ground, and I think Marcus McGhee can definitely exploit that. I think he can out-wrestle him. He does train at MMA Labs, so he's with a lot of good fighters himself as well. So I am going to go Marcus McGhee. I think I'm going to say by decision. I don't know if he's going to be able to submit Gaston Bolanos. We haven't really seen that part of Gaston Bolanos' game. I guess he did defend some of the takedowns of Aaron Phillips once he got to the ground. Like, he's able to get his way up a couple times, but I think Marcus McGhee is just going to be too strong. He is decent on the feet as well, so I think he can hang in there with Gaston Bolanos, but Bolanos has a lot of power in his hands and is actually very good on the feet. I do wish he was a little bit more like he thought out some of like his combinations that he does throw. He's very good on the feet with like the kickboxing and all that. So if Gaston Bolanos can kind of slow down and try to just out punch Marcus McGhee and then try to defend some of the takedowns when he comes in, maybe that would be a good idea for Gaston Bolanos, but I don't see that happening. So Marcus McGhee, I think, is going to win this one by decision. He's going to be taking down Gaston Bolanos and pretty much damaging him up against the fence. So I'm going to go with Marcus McGhee by decision. Other card, we have Matheus Semelsberger versus Preston Parsons. I am going to go with Matheus Semelsberger. He has a lot of power in his hands. He can't quite finish some of these fights, but I think I'll just say he's a higher level than Preston Parsons, or at least how I perceive it at this point. Matheus Semelsberger, I felt like he got robbed against Jeremiah Wells. He knocked him down pretty badly, too. It wasn't like the flash knockdowns that you saw versus like Cheeto and Cruz, where he got knocked down and got back up immediately. So I don't think it should be valued as much. That's exactly kind of how the scoring criteria is. If it's a flash knockdown, but you get destroyed for the rest of the fight, you can kind of give it either way, because in that Cruz Cheeto fight, Cheeto wasn't really landing anything other than knocking him down for a second, then Cruz would hop back up. In this fight, Matheus Semelsberger versus Jeremiah Wells, he would knock him down pretty badly on the verge of finishing him in 2 of the rounds and still ended up losing. So I thought that was a pretty rough decision. Obviously lost to Eurosmedics by KO. But Preston Parsons lost to Daniel Rodriguez by KO in his debut, and then beat Evan Elder, which is actually a pretty decent win to have as well. 7-0 Evan Elder, pretty good win. Evan Elder has definitely made it pretty competitive with a lot of the fighters in the UFC. So, or at least the lower ranked guys, he's put on some decent performances recently. Trevin Giles took him to a split decision, so you kind of have an idea of where Preston Parsons is skill wise and where he is with some of the talent in the UFC. Trevin Giles is pretty solid. However, I think Matheus Semelsberger with the power, he's very good on the ground as well. Maybe even underrated. I know he did run into some problems with Jeremiah Wells, but Jeremiah Wells is a pretty good wrestler. So I think he's going to be able to do decent on the ground if it goes there, but I just think the power is just going to be the big difference for Matheus Semelsberger, and I think he's due for a win. He got a rough one against Jeremiah Wells and got KO'd by Eurosmedic. I think he's due for a win. Makes it pretty much competitive with a lot of guys, good or bad. So I'm going to go with Matheus Semelsberger. Maybe he gets the KO. I'm not too sure. I'll say 3rd round TKO. But the thing with Matheus Semelsberger is he doesn't really finish guys. That's the only thing I'll say. Like, he knocked down Jake Matthews a bunch. I think he knocked down AJ Fletcher a couple times. Alex Morono is a little bit of just a scrap on the feet. Knocked down Jeremiah Wells a couple times. I think he might have knocked down Eurosmedic in that fight as well. I don't know if I remember that one correctly, but he doesn't seem to be able to finish some of these guys. So I'll just say a 30-27 decision for Matheus Semelsberger, knocking down Preston Parsons a couple times in the fight. So Matheus Semelsberger by decision against Preston Parsons. Up the card, we have Andrei Arlovski versus Waldo Cortes-Acosta. I'm going to go Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Andrei Arlovski is not able to take much damage anymore. I mean, he's getting paid very well, so maybe he's going to get cut very soon. He's almost 45 years of age. He's been in the UFC for a very long time, so maybe the Dana or the UFC won't cut him. I know they have a really good relationship with them, but Andrei Arlovski in his last 2 fights, Marcos Rogério de Lima, he has a lot of power, but the way he got knocked down was really weird. I don't know. I saw some people saying like it was an elbow or whatever. I didn't see a punch land when he got knocked down and then ended up getting submitted by Marcos Rogério de Lima, but de Lima has a lot of power. Getting KO'd by Dontel Mays is kind of a red flag, I'll say that. And Waldo Cortes-Acosta coming off a KO against Lucas Bresky, who's a decent fighter, or at least what I thought coming into the UFC. But I think Cortes-Acosta, if he's KOing Bresky, I think he can KO Arlovski. I'm going to be honest. I don't think Arlovski's chin is there that much anymore. So Cortes-Acosta is pretty decent. He's going to beat a lot of the lower unranked guys. And I think Andrei Arlovski is kind of in that area at this point, especially if you're losing to Dontel Mays by KO. So I'm going Cortes-Acosta by finish in the 1st round. I think he's going to be able to tag up Andrei Arlovski, kind of just go forward. And I think it's going to be a rough one for Arlovski. Maybe he's going to try and retire after this fight. He probably should. But I think Cortes-Acosta is definitely going to make a little bit of a statement KO here. So out the card, we have Phil Hawes versus Bruno Ferreira. I'm going to go Bruno Ferreira. Phil Hawes is very good if he had like a decent chin, but at this point he doesn't really have a chin. Like it's not a very good chin. It's not that he doesn't have it. Maybe he can take a couple shots, but it's not a very good chin. He got put out cold very badly against Ikram Aliskerov. Got TKO'd by Roman Dolidze. Got KO'd pretty badly against Chris Curtis as well. So the only guy he was able to really win against was Kyle Dawkins and Duran Win. I think he does have a win over Imavov. Am I thinking of someone else? Let me check. Yeah, he does have a win over Imavov. It was a relatively close decision. It was a majority decision, but he's able to implement his wrestling against Nasruddin Imavov. So his wrestling's pretty good. He's pretty good on the feet as well. It's just his chin does not hold up. And you got Bruno Ferreira, who KO'd and slept Gregory Rodriguez very badly in their fight. And he did lose to Nursultan Ruzabayev, is how I'm going to say that. But Ruzabayev is very good on the feet, very fast on the feet, and very long as well. So that was just a rougher matchup for Bruno Ferreira. I know it did pick him, but in hindsight, it was Ruzabayev is a very good fighter. We'll say that. It was a little bit of a questionable record coming into the UFC, but I think Ferreira is going to make a decent work of Phil Hawes in this fight. He does have some decent wrestling defense. Like, he'll get taken down, but I think he can eventually make his way up. But I think if even Bruno Ferreira with the power in his hands, I think he can eventually KO Phil Hawes, especially in his last few fights. That chin is in a very rough place. 35 years of age as well. Is not getting younger. 77.5 inches of reach. We'll have a 5.5 inch reach advantage for this fight, but I still don't think it'll be enough. Bruno Ferreira, I think, will eventually KO Phil Hawes in the second round. I think maybe Hawes will take him down in the first round. I think Ferreira is probably just going to be ready for it. He is a stockier guy and a lot smaller, so maybe it will not work as well as I'm thinking it will early on this fight, but I think eventually Bruno Ferreira is just going to walk him down and kind of just land a counter hook and put Hawes' lights out. So I'm going to go Bruno Ferreira by KO, 81% picked by Tapology. I agree with him, of course. Most of it by KO as well. So I'm going to go Bruno Ferreira by KO in the second round. Up the card, we have Ricky Simón versus Mario Bautista. This one was a very rough fight to pick. I think a lot of people are having a lot easier times with it too, because I don't know. There's something about this fight that's making me not so certain. It's Mario Bautista. A lot of people are saying that Mario Bautista, I'll just say this real quick. A lot of people are saying Mario Bautista didn't really have that great of a performance. I'm going to be honest, Damon Blackshear came in on like a week's notice. I think Mario Bautista was actually supposed to fight Cody Garbrandt. So the vast difference in fighting a guy like Cody Garbrandt, who's probably going to keep on the feet. I know Cody Garbrandt has really good wrestling. However, he's going to keep on the feet. So Mario Bautista was definitely training for a guy like Cody Garbrandt compared to a guy and Damon Blackshear, who's very good on the ground, came off like a twister finish. So it's definitely a lot different there. And just moving those aspects out of the way as well. I know Damon Blackshear took a week after the last fight too, so he had 2 weight cuts. However, just taking both of those factors out of it, I think Mario Bautista won that fight. Like, people are saying that Mario Bautista probably shouldn't have won it. It was a super close decision. It was a closer decision. However, I think Mario Bautista actually had a decent performance in there. I saw Guru saying it was a pretty bad performance. I didn't think it was that bad. I thought his elbows in the clinch were actually pretty good. He did put himself in a couple bad spots. However, he's able to get right back up to his feet against the fence. The cardio and the pace that he does pull kind of showed itself in the third round. Maybe visually, you could say he got knocked down, but it was pretty much... he was off balance, and he definitely won that third round. I think it was up to the first or second rounds to kind of just decide who you thought won. I thought for the first round was a little bit more clear for Mario Bautista based on damage, because he did land a couple good elbows that got the attention of Damon Blackshear in that fight. So I thought Mario Bautista won it. I thought it was actually a decent performance from him. I didn't think it was bad at all. Damon Blackshear is a pretty dangerous guy as well. So Ricky Simón is coming into this fight after losing to Song Yadong by KO. Song Yadong, of course, very tough matchup, very young as well, really good power in his hands. It was going to be a very tough matchup for Ricky Simón. So this one, Ricky Simón, a very good wrestler, very strong, very powerful. Mario Bautista, a pretty solid wrestler as well, has really good takedown defense. I didn't know where to necessarily pick this fight from, because Ricky Simón does have some good power in his hands and he's very quick. However, Mario Bautista is very quick on the feet as well, does stay out of the way of shots. Like, he does a really good job keep managing distance, especially with his head. Like, he doesn't have like a very tight guard, but he's able to manage distance against the fights that he does have, especially recently. So Mario Bautista, 30 years of age, both of these guys pretty much in their athletic physical primes and UFC standards. So I'm going to go Ricky Simón. I think Mario Bautista has a little bit more combinations in his game, but I think Ricky Simón is just going to be a little bit more powerful. I just don't know. Maybe he's definitely going to be a little bit more of the aggressor, especially with the strength and his wrestling as well. I think it's going to be a little bit higher than Mario Bautista, so he's going to be the aggressor in this fight, and I think that's kind of just going to be the way he wins this one. I think he goes in to wrestle, pushes him up against the fence, and pretty much just tries to maul him a little bit more, just tries to land some punches, just pretty much outstrike him that way. I don't see him managing distance and doing very well against Mario Bautista. Maybe he can just kind of catch Mario Bautista as he's like circling out with like a counter hook. Maybe he can do that, but I think Mario Bautista manages distance actually pretty well. So I don't know where to view this fight. I think it's a lot more competitive than a lot of people are seemingly looking at it at this point. Plus 140 underdog for Mario Bautista might not be a bad choice here. I think it does go to a decision, but I think it's going to be a close one. I think it's going to be a 29-28 decision for Ricky Simón here. I think it's going to be a decent performance. However, I'm not seeing it as clear as some of the other people are. So I don't know necessarily how to look at this fight. I'm definitely interested in it just to see where Mario Bautista's at in his career, because he's definitely worked his way up. I think he got submitted by Corey Sandhagen pretty early in his career. If I'm not wrong, yeah. In his UFC debut, got submitted by Corey Sandhagen, lost to Trevin Jones by KO. that was to like an uppercut, and that was what also a couple years ago. He's definitely gotten a lot better since then. I know what it's against, Jay Perrin, Brian Kelleher, Benito Lopez, Guido Canetti, and Damon Blackshear, but Damon Blackshear is definitely his best opponent. So I don't know. It's going to be a very big step up for Mario Bautista compared to his other fights. So we'll see how he does in this fight. But I am just going to have to stick with Ricky Simón. He's fought a lot higher competition. He did well against Jack Shore as well, in a pretty much very similar aspect to how I think he'll take this fight as well. He couldn't really hold his ground against Song Yadong because of the power, so that kind of makes a little bit more sense there, but I don't think there's that much of a threat of a KO for Mario Bautista in this fight. So 29-28 decision for Ricky Simón here. I think Mario Bautista has actually a pretty decent upset chance in this fight, so we'll see how it goes, but I'm going to go Ricky Simón 29-28 decision. Up the card, we have Jim Miller versus Gabriel Benitez. I'm going to go with Jim Miller. Gabriel Benitez is very old. Well, his last fight was a win against Charlie Ontiveros, of all people, a year and 4 months ago. He won by KO, but Charlie Ontiveros probably shouldn't have been in the UFC. I think I picked him a very long time ago. Who did I pick him to beat? I'm trying to think. It was a rough pick. I think, was it Valdez is what I want to say, and I think he got cut right after. Who was it? No, it was Gabriel Benitez. I'm sorry, I was wrong about that. It's Mexican, I guess. It's what I got mixed up there. Two Mexican people. So, but no, he got KO'd against Benitez, got cut right after that. So Charlie Ontiveros is not good. That was a year and 4 months ago. David Onama lost to him by KO. Lost to Billy Quarantillo by KO. Beat Justin James by KO, knee to the body. Like Omar Morales lost that one by decision. So Gabriel Benitez not looking too good in his career. I know Jim Miller lost to Alexander Hernandez, and Alexander Hernandez kind of revised his game plan at that point, kind of went for a more tactical style where he wasn't pretty much dumping his output in the early rounds. But Jim Miller, very solid in his career at this point, 40 years of age. I know he's 5 years older. However, I think he's going to be able to catch Gabriel Benitez and maybe possibly take him out by KO. If Billy Quarantillo, I know this is 2.5 years ago. I know if Billy Quarantillo is doing this, David Onama, they're both very solid fighters as well. Probably top 15, number 50, like fringe top 15, high unranked guys. I know that's how they kind of are and how they're viewed. But I think Jim Miller has the power, very good on the feet. I don't think anything is going to happen to him too dangerously. He's going to get his UFC 300 fight where he can retire. This one's kind of interesting that they did schedule it, months before, like 3 months before. So I wonder if Jim Miller just wanted another fight or they just needed a name to put on the card. But I think Jim Miller wins this one by finish. Minus 120 favorite, which is very interesting. It might be a decent little bet here. But a lot of people are picking Jim Miller by KO, Jim Miller by decision, decision and submission. So it's kind of mixed a little bit, but the majority are saying KO by Jim Miller. I think second round finish for Jim Miller is probably the way to go here. So I'm going to go Jim Miller by second round. So we have Matheus Nicolau versus Manel Kape in their second fight. I think I'm going to go with Manel Kape. I don't like that Matheus Nicolau got finished in his last fight against Brandon Morale. I know Brandon Morale just fought for the title, just lost pretty much, I think, lost every single round. I don't think I'm wrong there, but I'm pretty sure he did lose every single round. Brandon Royval, he lost that one by KO. He was doing decent early on there, but he did get caught. Manel Kape, a lot of power in his hands, kind of just walks you down, really good chin as well. I think he can eventually catch Matheus Nicolau similarly to how Brandon Royval did. I know Brandon Royval is a little bit different of a fighter. He's going to be a little bit more sneakier, like kind of just set you up with a bunch of combos. Manel Kape's just going to chat his way through Matheus Nicolau in this fight, in my opinion. 31 years of age for Matheus Nicolau, of course, as well. But Manel Kape, you kind of saw it against Felipe dos Santos, who did put a really good fight on short notice. You saw a really good scrap there, but I think Manel Kape, of course, it was on short notice, so I won't judge it too much for Manel Kape as well. Felipe dos Santos is a very talented fighter, but I'm going to go Manel Kape. I think you eventually catch Matheus Nicolau in this fight and finish him by TKO. I'll say in the second round as well. There's a lot of second round finishes in my brain here, so maybe we'll move a couple to first round. But I think eventually after the first round, Matheus Nicolau is going to get some decent punches in there, but I think Manel Kape's going to be there to counter him. So I'm going to go Manel Kape by finish in the second round. 87% pick by Tapology, 38% by decision, 54% by KO. Up the card to our main event, we have Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker 2. Their first fight, of course, ended due to like disqualification. What did they call it? It was a really weird finish because Johnny Walker got illegally kneed, and you normally see that where a situation where Magomed Ankalaev would get disqualified and he would lose the fight. But I don't know how the rules work there. I did do a little bit more of a super in-depth video on this fight with the early prediction and breakdown I did a few weeks ago. But I'll kind of just go over this fight a little bit, I won't say briefly, but I'll go over the topics I kind of discussed in that video. I'm going to go with Magomed Ankalaev. I think he does a really good job at staying out of danger on the feet and on the ground. I think he does a really good. I know he got submitted against Paul Craig within like the last few seconds of whatever fight he was in. I think it was a 3-round fight too. I got submitted in that fight. It was like his only loss as well. So, but I think Magomed Ankalaev does a really good job at evading punches. He did a really good job against Johnny Walker, kind of frustrating him a little bit more in that fight. Johnny Walker forced it to where he faked an injury just to kind of go after Ankalaev and try to land on him, but he couldn't really land too much on Ankalaev. Again, Ankalaev does a really good job maintaining distance and doesn't really get hit. So I think in a 5-round fight, that's definitely going to benefit him. I know there's been a little bit of some complaints against Magomed Ankalaev. He was quite the finisher early on in his career against, of course, you had, let me just run through these real quick. He did lose to Paul Craig in like the last second of that fight by submission, but beat Marcin Prachnio by finish. Abreu went to a decision there, but beat Lugan Bula by finish. Ankalaev by finish. That one was a little bit interesting in that first fight, so I won't really count it there. But finished Ankalaev in their second fight, won by KO, pretty brutal KO as well. But when he started to fight some of the higher level fighters, he started going to decisions. Nikita Krylov, Volkan Ozdemir, Thiago Santos, Anthony Smith, he did finish, and went to a decision with Jan Blachowicz as well. So I think some of the higher ranked fighters, he has started to not take as many chances in those fights. But I think in a 5-round fight, it definitely benefits him quite a bit. Johnny Walker, I know, has been in a couple 5-round fights. I think he's lost. I don't want to say he's lost all of them, but I may be right there. Jamal Hill was a 5-round fight, and I think Thiago Santos was a 5-round fight. Let me actually double check. I think it was a 5-round fight. So he has lost both of those fights. The way Johnny Walker is, he's very big, and he did look really big against Magomed Ankalaev. And I think he will eventually gas if he was fighting the same style that he would fight in a 3-round fight, which is why I am going to go with Magomed Ankalaev. If Magomed Ankalaev kind of just went after Johnny Walker early in this fight, I think he could get hurt very badly on the feet. However, Johnny Walker, I think, is going to be a little bit more calmer. If Ankalaev just plays his game, it's going to force Johnny Walker to kind of just be, I don't want to say safe, but I think he's going to be a little more patient, kind of play into Ankalaev's game, and I think that helps him quite a bit. Maybe Walker can go after the legs of Ankalaev. Jan Blachowicz did that pretty well. Pretty much made it a split decision split decision fight with Magomed Ankalaev. Obviously, was it a split draw? What did they call it? Yeah, it was a split draw in their fight. So maybe Johnny Walker can go after the legs of Ankalaev, but I think Ankalaev is just going to do a really good job staying out of danger in this fight. Johnny Walker doesn't have that great of a chin. I don't think Ankalaev will finish him. I'm going to go with Ankalaev by decision in this fight. Probably 49-46. Maybe Johnny Walker lands a couple good punches, just outstrikes him on the feet. Maybe eventually Magomed Ankalaev can take him down too. He did do a decent job there. We didn't really necessarily get to see the full extent of that in their fight, because it did lead to the illegal knee. So he did get him down briefly, but then Johnny Walker got up against the fence. So we don't know exactly how that'll necessarily go. It was a 3-round fight as well, so maybe the output of Ankalaev won't be as too much there. But I think Ankalaev can definitely pressure him a little bit more here, kind of just take him down, get him working. Johnny Walker's much bigger, get him tired out a little bit more, and beat him up on the feet. So I'm going to go with Magomed Ankalaev by decision, 49-46 decision. Johnny Walker can't really do the crazy stuff that he's normally used to. If he does, maybe you can try and go out there and try to get the finish, but the more crazy stuff you do, the more Magomed Ankalaev is going to have a chance to take you down. So I think it's going to be a calmer fight this time. I think it's going to be a decision win for Ankalaev. So let me know who you guys think will win this main event fight down below. What do you guys think of the card? And I'll see you guys